People ignore warnings all the time, especially from kids. They assume children exaggerate, misunderstand, or let their imagination run wild. But sometimes, a child sees the danger adults overlook, the kind that hides in silence just long enough to strike. Jasonstatham had one hand on his car door when he heard footsteps pounding toward him, small, frantic, desperate. The little girl's voice cracked as she shouted, "Wait, don't start your car." He turned, confused, until he saw her trembling finger pointing toward his front wheel. And when Jason finally knelt down to look, his breath caught, because what he saw lodged under the tire wasn't just dangerous. It was deadly. Before we continue, thank you so much for watching and supporting these stories. It truly means the world. If you enjoy moments where danger turns into courage, where ordinary people step up in extraordinary ways, and where small voices make the biggest difference, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep bringing these powerful stories to life every single day. All right, let's get back to it. Evening light spilled across the suburban street like warm honey, turning every roof golden and washing every tree in soft amber. It was the kind of calm that made neighborhoods feel safe, sprinklers humming, someone grilling 2 houses down, a dog barking lazily behind a fence. The kind of peace people assumed would last forever. Jasonstatham didn't live in that neighborhood, but he drove through it often enough. It was a shortcut to a small hardware store he liked, quiet, family-owned, the sort of place where someone actually remembered your name. He had just finished helping an old friend repair a fence, and now he was heading home, tired, dusty, and thinking about nothing more dramatic than a shower and a cup of tea. He wasn't expecting chaos. He wasn't expecting fear. He certainly wasn't expecting a child screaming for his life. Jason clicked his car key, the vehicle chirped, and he reached for the driver's door when tiny, frantic footsteps slapped against the pavement behind him. "Wait, start your car." Jason froze mid-motion. He didn't move, didn't turn the key. Something in the tone of that voice stopped him cold. Children yell all the time, but this wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't whining. It was sheer, unfiltered terror. He pivoted slowly. A little girl, maybe 9 or 10, was sprinting toward him, hair flying behind her, face flushed, breath ragged. She stumbled once, caught herself, and kept running until she skidded to a stop 2 feet from him, palms trembling. Jason crouched slightly, hands open, steady voice ready. "Hey, slow down, what's wrong?" She didn't answer at first. She just pointed, her whole arm shaking violently, toward the bottom of his SUV. "Dee, don't drive," she panted. You'll die." Jason blinked, not confused, assessing. Kids don't usually talk like that, not unless they've seen something real. He followed the direction of her trembling finger. She was pointing specifically at the front left tire, the kind of angle only someone close to the ground would notice, someone small. Jason stepped closer, lowering himself to one knee. "What did you see?" he asked gently. Her voice cracked. "It sits under your wheel." Jason's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in focus. He leaned even closer, letting his hand hover over the pavement without touching anything yet. The asphalt still held the day's heat. A soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Everything looked normal until he shifted to the side and saw a faint glimmer beneath the tire. Metal, and not the friendly kind. He felt the hairs on his arms rise. Jason didn't reach for it. He moved his hand back deliberately, a professional's instinct. The girl swallowed hard, tears swelling in her eyes. "I didn't know what it was," she whispered. "I just saw a thing, a red box and wires. I saw it when I was riding past on my bike. I thought it was a toy, but then..." Her voice broke. "Then Miss Clara told us that things like that can hurt people." Jason nodded slowly. Someone had slid a device, a dangerous one, under his wheel. "Good job," he murmured to the girl. "You did the right thing." She sniffed hard, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Are you gonna die if you touch it?" she whispered. "No," Jason said softly. "I'm not planning on it." He stood and scanned the street. The quiet charm of the neighborhood suddenly felt like a mask, too quiet, too normal, too still. The curtains of one window fluttered faintly, then stilled again. A screen door shut 2 houses down. Someone walked a dog on the opposite sidewalk, oblivious. Whoever placed that device knew what they were doing, and they might be close. Jason crouched again, meeting the girl's eyes. "Tell me your name." "Sophie." "All right, Sophie," he said calmly. "I need you to stay back, far back, behind that tree over there." Her chin trembled. But what if it explodes?" Jason offered the smallest, steady smile, the kind that comes from someone who has lived through things far worse than this moment. "It's not going to explode with you anywhere near it," he said. "Not on my watch." Sophie hesitated, then nodded and shuffled backward, never taking her eyes off him. She stopped behind a big oak tree, hugging the trunk so tightly her fingers turned white. Jason waited until she was safely behind cover before he knelt beside the wheel again. The device was small, compact, square-shaped, wrapped in an innocent-looking red casing that almost resembled a child's toy block. But the exposed wiring told the truth. Someone who knew explosives had designed this. Someone who wanted it to look harmless enough to ignore until it was. The placement under the wheel meant one thing. It was meant to detonate when the car moved. Jason inhaled slowly. He'd seen these before, different versions, different countries, different enemies, but all with the same purpose: kill and kill quietly. He didn't touch it. He didn't even lean too close. Instead, he scanned the ground around it, marks in the dust, shoe prints, any sign of who had been here. He saw faint impressions near the curb, too small for an adult, too messy for someone cautious. Drag marks like something had been slid, not placed gently. Jason's jaw clenched. Someone had hurried. Someone had been sloppy. Or someone wanted him to see it. Behind him, Sophie whispered, "Is it a bomb?" Jason didn't answer directly. "You were right to warn me." A door creaked open across the street. Not loudly, just enough for someone to peek. Jason's eyes flicked toward it. A figure retreated quickly behind the curtain, suspicious. Very. He scanned houses, windows, rooftops. His instincts hummed, the quiet, precise hum of a man who had been hunted before. "Stay behind the tree," he said again, voice even. Sophie nodded, hugging herself tighter. Jason pulled out his phone, not to call 911. Not yet. First, he recorded the device from a safe angle, then the tire, then the ground around it. If someone wanted to frame him, intimidate him, or lure him into a trap, evidence would matter later. Only then did he dial emergency services. Neighboring windows cracked open as the siren wailed in the distance. People began stepping out of their houses, craning their necks toward Jason's SUV. Little clusters formed, neighbors whispering, assuming, gossiping. Sophie peeked from behind her tree, terrified but trying to act brave. When the squad car arrived, the first officer stepped out, but Jason motioned him back firmly. "Don't walk over here," Jason said. "Wheel-triggered device, looks active." The officer blanched and raised both hands. "Right, okay, bomb squad inbound." Jason nodded. A second officer ushered Sophie farther away. She clung to her teddy bear, when had she grabbed that, and kept looking back at Jason like he was the only safe thing in the world. The street was evacuated. Police tape went up. Curious neighbors grew restless. A group of teenagers started recording on their phones until officers shooed them off. But in all the chaos, Jason's eyes never stopped scanning windows. Especially one, the house across the street, blinds barely parted. He didn't like how long they'd been still. Finally, the bomb squad arrived, heavy gear, calm presence, tools in hand. Jason stood with them, giving a brief but precise rundown. They assessed the device in silence. One of them, a veteran, based on the lines in his face and the steadiness in his hands, exhaled slowly. "Someone wanted this to look sloppy," he muttered, "but the trigger mechanism isn't sloppy at all. This is pro work." Jason nodded once. The man glanced up at him. "You've seen these before." Jason held his gaze. "Something like them." The tech crouched and began the slow, careful process of disabling the device. Every wire lifted with surgical precision. Every click echoed louder than it should have. Even the air felt thinner. Finally, a soft beep. A small exhale. The device relaxed, blinking from red to neutral. "It's safe," the tech said. The entire street let out a collective breath. Police ushered people back into their homes, murmuring reassurances. Sophie sprinted immediately toward Jason, but he knelt and caught her gently before she reached the front wheel. "It's okay now," he said softly. She clung to him, shaking. "I was so scared," she whispered. I thought if you drove away, you'd disappear forever." Jason held her steady, one hand on her back. "Thank you for saving me." Her small breath hitched. "No one believed me at first. I tried to tell Mrs. Darrell down the street, but she said I was being dramatic. Then I saw you getting in and—" Jason placed a hand on her shoulder. "You trusted your instincts. That's good. Don't ever lose that." Sophie nodded, rubbing her eyes. Police began questioning the neighbors, but Jason's eyes stayed pinned on the house with the parted blinds. Someone peeked again, this time slower, more cautious. Jason's jaw hardened. He stood, but before he could take a step, an officer approached. "Sir, we'll need your formal statement." Jason nodded, but kept his gaze fixed on that single, silent window. Someone had been watching the whole time. Someone who knew what they put under his wheel. Someone who wanted to see the results, good or bad. And Jason had a feeling they weren't finished. The officer cleared his throat. "Sir?" Jason blinked once, returning to the moment. "Yeah, I'll give my statement." But his voice carried an edge, the subtle steel of a man preparing for round two. Because something told him this wasn't a random act. This wasn't a prank or a coincidence or a mistake. Someone had targeted him. And they'd done it in a neighborhood where children played, where people walked dogs, where a little girl had nearly watched a man die. Someone out there was reckless. And reckless people don't quit after one failed attempt. Jason walked toward the patrol car to give his statement, but in his mind, part two was already unfolding. Because if someone wanted him dead, he was going to find out who. And why. And he wasn't going to wait long. Jason didn't move at first. He just stood there, staring at the tiny red device wedged beneath his SUV's front tire, square, metallic, with a blinking yellow light on the side. Too small to be a standard car bomb, too intentionally placed to be anything harmless. And the fact that the little girl had seen it before he did made something cold coil through his chest. "Don't touch it," the girl cried, stepping back as if even standing too close would detonate it. Jason raised a steady hand. "It's all right, I'm not touching anything yet." Yet. His voice was calm, but inside the gears were turning fast, tracking possibilities, threats, escape routes, and the girl's safety first and foremost. The girl's breathing hitched. "My uncle said if you turned the wheel it would go off. I saw him, he shoved it under your car." Her voice cracked at the end. Jason straightened. "Your uncle," he repeated quietly. She nodded rapidly, eyes filling again. "He was yelling earlier. He said you were in the way and he'd handle it. I didn't know what he meant until I saw him sneaking around your car." Jason clenched his jaw hard. So this wasn't random. It wasn't some coincidence. Someone had placed a device beneath his vehicle specifically, and a child had seen it happen. He looked down at her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emily." "Emily, you did the right thing coming to me." He knelt so they were eye to eye. "You saved my life." Her chin quivered. "I didn't want you to die." Jason exhaled slowly. "You didn't let that happen. That takes courage, real courage." But even as he spoke gently to her, his mind sharpened like a blade. Because if the uncle had planted something under Jason's car, then he was still nearby. Watching. Waiting. Jason rose to his feet again, scanning the quiet suburban street. The sun was low, the air warm, the neighborhood calm, the kind of peaceful evening where no one expected danger. Which made it the perfect setting for someone who wanted to hide a threat behind normalcy. "Emily," Jason said, keeping his tone low, "where is your uncle now?" She swallowed. I think he's inside our house." She pointed down the street to a small white house with a broken porch step and half-drawn curtains. Jason followed her gesture, his eyes narrowing. "What's he like with you?" he asked gently. Emily's shoulders tensed. She gripped the edge of her shirt. "He gets mad a lot, especially when Grandma talks back. He pushes her sometimes. Yesterday he threw a plate at the wall because dinner was too cold. And her voice dropped to barely a whisper. He said he wished I'd stop sticking my nose in things. Jason felt a flare of anger in his chest, cold, focused, dangerous. Not the kind that explodes. The kind that calculates. He looked down at the red device again. No wires trailing, no noticeable trigger mechanism, foot placed, pressure sensitive, or motion based, too many unknowns. He couldn't risk starting the car. He couldn't risk anyone walking too close. And the little girl's uncle had escalated from violence to this. Jason's voice turned firm. Emily, I want you to go stand far away, right over there by that mailbox. Don't move until I say. She nodded and ran, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Jason pulled out his phone and dialed a contact, a former demolition specialist he knew from a past life, someone who could identify a device by sound alone. Send me a picture, the man said immediately. Jason snapped a photo, keeping his hand steady. Seconds later, the phone buzzed. Where did you get that? Jason replied. Under my car. Another pause. Longer, sharper. Then the specialist spoke again, his voice lower this time. Listen carefully. It's homemade, military-style casing but not official, pressure-triggered. If you'd driven even a few feet, the weight shift would have set it off. Jason exhaled through his nose. And the blast radius? 1.5 meters, enough to kill the driver instantly. Jason clenched his jaw. That was all he needed to hear. Thanks, he said. Be careful, Jason. Always. Jason hung up the call, slipped the phone in his pocket, and turned his head toward the house at the end of the street, the one Emily pointed to. Behind the curtain, just for a second, a silhouette moved. Jason saw it, and the silhouette realized he'd been spotted. The curtain fell back into place. Emily, still by the mailbox, hugged her arms. Is he going to be mad? She asked. Jason turned toward her and shook his head. No, not at you. He took one slow, deliberate breath. Then, but he and I are going to have a talk. Emily blinked. Are you sure? He's really strong when he gets angry. Jason gave a small, controlled smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. So am I. He started walking. Not fast. Not loud. Just steady footsteps measured, posture relaxed but ready, gaze locked on the house where a man who hurt children and planted bombs was waiting. The neighborhood was quiet. A door creaked somewhere. Lights flicked on across the street. A dog barked faintly in the distance. Jason walked straight toward the house, toward the man who thought intimidation and violence made him powerful. He passed the mailbox where Emily stood and gently laid a hand on her shoulder. You did the bravest thing anyone could have done today, he said. Now let me take care of the rest. Emily's small voice trembled. Please, don't let him hurt Grandma. Jason looked her dead in the eyes. He won't hurt anyone ever again. Then he continued forward up the walkway toward the peeling front door. Inside, someone moved. Footsteps. A shadow crossing the hall. A figure trying to decide whether to run or confront. Jason reached the porch. The door opened. The uncle stood there, sweaty, nervous, eyes darting, trying to appear tough but failing. Can I help you? He stammered. Jason didn't answer immediately. He just stared. The kind of stare that stripped away lies, excuses, and the thin mask of bravado the man hid behind. Finally, Jason spoke, low, deliberate, dangerous. You and I need to talk. The uncle leaned on the doorframe like he owned the whole street, but Jason saw the tremor in his hand, the flicker of panic in his eyes. Men like him were only brave when their victims were small, when their fists were bigger than the ones they hit, when no one was watching. Not tonight. Jason's voice was low, controlled. You put something under my car. The uncle swallowed hard. I don't know what you're talking about. Jason stepped one foot onto the porch, slow, steady, the way a storm rolls in. You're going to want to tell the truth, because lying is going to make this a lot worse. A bead of sweat slid down the man's temple. Inside the house, a fragile voice croaked. Who's at the door? Jason didn't take his eyes off the uncle. Your mother, he asked quietly. The uncle's jaw clenched. My business, not yours. Jason's gaze sharpened. She's yours to take care of, not to terrorize. The man bristled, finally snapping. Look, tough guy, you think you can walk up here and act like you own the place. You don't know anything about me. Jason tilted his head. But I know what you do to a child who can't fight back. That hit harder than any punch Jason could have thrown. The uncle's eyes darted to the street, to Emily still standing by the mailbox hugging herself. He panicked. She's lying, kids lie all the time. Jason took another step forward. Did she lie about you slapping her grandmother? The man froze. Jason kept his voice level, unshaken. She told me everything, and she warned me before you murdered me with a device you shoved under my car. So start talking, now. The uncle's mask cracked completely. He pointed a shaking finger toward Emily. She shouldn't have seen that. She was supposed to stay inside. Jason's expression hardened. So you admit it. The uncle flinched. I just wanted to scare you. That's all. You stuck your nose in my business yesterday at the store, acting like some kind of hero with your don't talk to her like that nonsense. There it was. Jason remembered him now. The shouting at the cashier. The swearing at the elderly woman holding up the line. The girl hiding behind her grandmother. Jason had stepped in then, too, a quick, quiet intervention. A warning glare. I told you, the uncle hissed, I don't forget people who embarrass me. Jason exhaled. You nearly killed me because I told you not to bully a child. The man jabbed a finger toward him. You think you can walk around like some savior? This is MY house, MY rules, MY family. Jason's voice cut him cleanly. Family doesn't mean ownership. Inside, a frail voice trembled again. Emily, is she outside? Where is she? Jason stepped to the side, seeing past the uncle's shoulder. A grandmother sat in a recliner, gripping the armrests, her arms mottled with yellowing bruises, the kind she didn't get from falling. Jason's jaw tightened. Enough. He spoke quietly, like a judge delivering a sentence. You're done hurting them. The uncle laughed, unhinged, desperate. What are you going to do? Hit me. Go ahead, try it. You lay a hand on me, I call the cops. Jason didn't blink. I'm not hitting you. Then he stepped past him, uninvited, and entered the house. The uncle stumbled backward. Hey, you can't come in here. Jason ignored him and knelt beside the grandmother. Ma'am, he said gently, are you all right? Her voice wavered. No, he's been so angry lately. Jason's eyes softened. You don't deserve that. The uncle charged forward, raising his hand to grab Jason's shoulder. Jason turned calm fast, controlled, and caught his wrist midair. The uncle gasped. Jason didn't twist, didn't yank, didn't strike. He just held the man's arm in place, effortlessly, like someone pinning down a fly. You want to hit someone, Jason said softly, try hitting me. The man tried to pull back, he couldn't. Jason wasn't even using strength, just presence. The uncle's voice shook. You can't just come here. Jason released him abruptly. The man stumbled into the wall. Jason stood between him and the two women now, a human shield. You put them through enough, he said. You don't get to keep pretending you're the victim. The uncle's chest heaved. I'll call the police. I'll say you broke into my house. Jason stepped closer. Good, he said, call them. The uncle blinked. What? Jason leaned in slightly, voice low. Because when they get here, they'll see the bruises on your mother. They'll hear your niece describe the device you planted under my car. They'll find that device sitting untouched under my wheel with your fingerprints all over it. The uncle froze. And then, Jason added softly, they'll listen to every neighbor who's heard the yelling, every passerby who's seen you grab her by the arm, every person who's watched that little girl flinch when you raise your voice. The uncle took a step back. Then another. His voice cracked, desperate. You don't understand. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Jason cut him off. Then why is everyone in this house scared of you? The man collapsed against the kitchen counter, burying his face in his hands. He wasn't angry now. He was exposed. Jason didn't let up. You think fear makes you strong, he said, but tonight a child stood up to you, and that child won. The uncle's shoulders shook. I don't want to go to jail. Jason stared at him for a long moment, then answered. That depends on what you do next. The uncle looked up slowly. Jason pointed toward the grandmother. You're going to apologize right now, you're going to mean it. Then you're going to pack a bag and leave this house tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. The uncle swallowed. And if I refuse? Jason didn't raise his voice. Then I call the police before you finish your sentence. The silence thickened. The grandmother watched, trembling. Emily watched from the doorway, small but brave. And finally, the uncle broke. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll leave. Jason nodded once. Good choice. But Emily stepped forward, tiny, trembling, courageous. Her voice cracked. Don't ever come back. The uncle's eyes filled, a mix of shame and something like regret, but he didn't argue. Jason stood by the doorframe as the man gathered a bag with shaking hands. As he passed Jason on the porch, Jason spoke one final time. Get help and stay away from them. The uncle nodded, defeated. Then he disappeared into the night. Jason watched him go, expression unreadable, breath steady, until the figure vanished down the street. Only then did he turn back toward the house. Emily ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. You saved us. Jason placed a gentle hand on her head. No, he said, you saved me first. The grandmother whispered through tears. Thank you, thank you. Jason shook his head. You two never deserved fear, just peace. Emily looked up, wiping her eyes. Is the bad thing under your car gone? Jason gave her a small smile. Let's take care of that together. He walked her outside, keeping her behind him as he contacted local authorities to safely remove the device. When the bomb unit arrived, the chief looked at Jason and said, Whoever planted this wasn't making a threat, they were making a promise. Jason only answered, They won't be back. By the time the street cleared and the danger was gone, Emily held his hand tightly. Will we be okay now? She whispered. Jason squeezed her hand gently. You already are. And as he walked them back inside, making sure both were safe, doors locked, lights on, one thing was certain. He didn't just stop a man, he stopped a future of fear.